Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Kerrigan. I'm a composer, producer and also an instructor at Point Blank. Within this tutorial series we'll be looking at Spitfire Audio's new library, London Contemporary Orchestra Strings, and I'll be sharing with you some composition tips which should give you a flavour of what you could learn on one of Point Blank's courses online and in London, LA or Ibiza. You can check out their full range of courses at pointblankmusicschool.com. So there's also this advanced section here which contains a few other goodies, such as these extended techniques patches here. In these we have some of the same articulations but grouped by category, but a few other sort of goodies in there as well. For example here, this one, slow wide vib, which is a really nice sound. And in violin short, there's some really nice kind of bridge scrape sounds. So as you can hear, overall there are two sort of general strengths of this collection. You know, these kind of wonderful, strange textures and these kind of honest, beautiful in a sort of non-cheesy way, these legato patches, and actually the staccatos are sort of very useful as well. So, you know, really good range of string sounds to work with here. There's also a folder of individual articulations included in here as well, and a few other patches here for economics. So if you're on a computer with low CPU or memory, for example on a laptop, there are some light resources versions of some of the patches, and these economic patches are actually a more curated kind of collection of the sounds, so that can kind of save you a bit of time. Of course, generally on contact there are a few ways to save on your CPU or memory if resources are tight. So even on a general patch here, such as violins here, of course you can choose to, you know, not load sounds that you're not using by just unchecking in the advanced window particular articulations. And another very sort of useful general thing to do in contact, if you're running low on resources, is to just use this feature here, purge, and you can just go into here and click purge all samples, and what that does is it unloads anything that's in memory, and then only when you play in certain notes will it actually load those sounds. So you can, you know, just play in the sounds as you need them, and you can see it'll only load the notes that you actually use. So that's another good way of saving your memory resources. But Spitfire very usefully included some light resources patches anyway, so that can be even more useful and help speed up your workflow, because of course when you're having ideas, when you're composing, you don't want things getting in the way and slowing you down. Of course, another classic thing you can do in any DAW is just commit, and once you're happy with your MIDI part, just bounce it as audio. And of course you can always keep your MIDI and go back to it if you want to change it later, but you know, sometimes bouncing things as audio just helps you commit to that part. There's another useful patch in here called Time Machine, which comes with a selection of short sounds, and what's useful with this is you can actually really change the tone of the sound and create some quite interesting textures, particularly if you're using the ostinatum. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, because you can actually change the sort of perceived length of these sounds. It's a little bit like using a transient designer, I guess. So I'm going to have a muck around with that, and just so you guys can see what the possibilities are here. This is useful for sort of more modern type of ostinato that are obviously very sort of processed by nature. You can also get some interesting textures by blending two sounds at once, which is a nice thing about the way this interface is designed. You can select a second articulation by just holding Shift and clicking on a second one. So for example, I could blend sul tasto here with sul pont to create a sound that's kind of beautiful with a kind of edge to it. And this is really useful when you're writing for film in particular, because of course sometimes you're needing to score for kind of complex emotions that are neither sort of beautiful nor strange and are actually a mixture of several emotions. So this can really help you kind of find those. At the end of the day, when we're composing, we're essentially improvising. So to have these inspiring sounds and combinations of these sounds can, really help with that creative process. Given its experimental nature, it's surprisingly playable and gives you a ton of options to work with, particularly these extended techniques. It's obvious a ton of work and effort has gone into this instrument. The sounds are innovative and unique and they sound great in their own right, but also work well as additional layers in arrangements, adding a kind of airy openness and sort of edgy honesty to slick sounding strings and other sounds. And as I mentioned earlier, it's beautifully recorded. It's got a real lovely, warm, smooth sound, which makes some of these stranger sounds in particular more sort of palatable, and really gives you an interesting palette of cinematic sounds to play with. It really is an interesting and inspiring library, and above all, it's a lot of fun to play with, which is where often the best music comes from.